Hey everybody, welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. I'm your host Danielle here with Ken.
Hey guys, how are you today?
So we're going to take a few minutes, let everyone get situated in the room. Why don't you guys let me know where you're from? Looks like CD's from Phoenix joining us.
What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about the K-shaped recovery.
Okay. This will
Yep.
be fun.
Yep, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Jason wanted to know if it's K-shaped for you. People from India, Denver, Tiffany from Billings, Montana, Venezuela, people from all over the world here.
Great.
Pretty cool.
Thank you guys. I appreciate your time. It's the most valuable thing we have. I appreciate it.
Oh, Warsheep's from Columbus, my neck of the woods. Another one from Billings, Montana. Hones from Seattle, where you're from originally.
Yep, my stomping grounds.
All right. And just so you guys know, go ahead and put your questions in the chat. We always answer our premium questions first. KenMcElroy.com/premium. But we try to answer the questions that we can. All right. Well, let's get started. So to start, what is the K-shaped recovery?
So a lot of times economists like to talk about the different kinds of recoveries that we're having, or, when there's some kind of a recession, which arguably we're still in. So there's what everybody wanted was what's called a V shape, which means that, things drop off and then they bounce back up.
Right.
But what's happening now is that there's a certain part of the segment that's actually rising and doing fine, and then there's another piece that's not. And so there's a lot of information on this, and so essentially it's an uneven recovery. And so I think that different parts will recover based on whatever their rates are and times, and whatever the margins are for that particular segment. So as we know, some of the lower end, probably less less paid, like the service industry as an example.
Yeah, they're going down in the K. They're not recovering.
Yes, right. So the unfortunately, the some of the lower end, like a server or bartending stuff that we probably all did, like I did when I was in college. Mm-hmm. It's not recovering obviously like some of the other areas.
But not even just that, even like your tourism, your hotels, your events, all of that is still on that downward cycle.
Yeah. And really you got to kind of take a look at industry, I think. A lot of times this the media is making this look like a rich versus poor, and in some cases it is.
Yeah.
But there's definitely there's a whole bunch of stuff happening around salary versus high paid, and working from home, and there's all kinds of stuff happening.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So what's so good about a V-shaped recovery is, as they like to say, we're all in this together, right?
It kind of recovers all back, and so
right.
There's more than likely, you got to kind of look at industry. I think you have to take a look at like travel. Let's just pick on travel. There's obviously wealthy people that are in the travel business, and there's people that are not wealthy that are in the travel business. And so the travel business, or the industry itself, is impacted for sure. The cruise lines, let's just pick on cruise lines or airlines or
hotels or any of that.
Yeah, or amusement parks or whatever it might be, right? So yes, there are people that own those, and yes, there are executives at Disney and celebrity cruise lines and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we're talking about and both of those are impacted. So a lot of those people, I think the last thing I read, there were something like 75,000 pilots that are technically higher paid that are, potentially on the chopping block in the airline industry. So you kind of have to look at industry,
Right.
I think.
And Adam says, thank you for talking about this, because the other real estate guys aren't really talking about this.
Oh.
So really important, to get this
It's very,
out.
yeah. If you guys are investing in real estate, and obviously this is a real estate channel, this is a big, big thing. So, I'll just give you an example. So I was in Las Vegas last week, and I was on my way to Park City and decided to drive. So I stayed at the Four Seasons. And I thought, well, I hadn't been to Vegas in a year. Now, I used to live in Las Vegas too, so I understand how Vegas works. You have, casino bosses that make more money, and then you have the dealers that make less. Mm-hmm. Now, that's just the way it is. And then you have the servers, and you have the restaurants, and you have all of those things. And I had a great time when I lived there in my late 20s and early 30s. So we're there. And what did I see? I saw very, very limited service. I saw restaurants that were closed permanently, and I saw some of the bigger restaurants that were only open Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. And, obviously there aren't a lot of people coming in there, and, everything's impacted, whether you're, let's say, got a rental car or,
right.
Whatever it is, right? So the valet guy is making less. The bell person is making less. And even the spas, I went and got massages, they're closed. Right. A lot of the amenities inside of the spa.
The steam room and all that.
Yeah. And by the way, and then I went to the Montage in Park City, same thing, right?
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. And so that's what we're talking about. Everyone is getting impacted in this particular sector.
Now, right. So when you have part of the economy going like this and part of the economy going down, what are the negative implications of that? Because that's not a good thing.
There's a lot.
For anybody.
There's a tremendous amount. Well, one is most people, and it's not in every case, but most people that are making, say, $20 an hour are probably trying to save at some point to buy a home or something a little more permanent than what I would call more transient in nature, like the rental business, which is the business that I'm in. So in my portfolio, we have about 8,000 apartments. We have areas like oil and gas that is way down, like in Oklahoma and in some areas of Texas and Houston specifically, where those, again, different industry, significantly impacted. And I'm talking about at every level. So, now the executives are typically last to go in the corporate office, but, they are on the chopping block too, just like, the worker down in the oil fields as an example. So I think that what you have to look at is you have to look at just all the things. You have to look at housing in those areas. People are doubling up more than likely. Are they paying rent? Are they not paying rent? That's why this stimulus package, even though it's crazy, the amount of money that we've been throwing at the economy, people need it. They absolutely need this money because everything was disrupted from this, and the government's obviously trying to prop it up right now.
Well, and right. And then also, when you have such a gap in wages, you have people making more money, people making less money, but then that also impacts the market. So let's talk about how that's impacted the market, because everyone wants to know, why is the real estate market going up? Why is the stock market going up? Why is crypto going up? Why is everything going up when you have an economy that's not going up?
Yeah, well, okay, let's just take a look at it. First of all, real estate is a business. So in order for somebody that gets a bunch of money, let's say through stimulus, they're not going to go out and invest in real estate. There's a lot to it. If you're not in the game, it's hard to get into the game, and there's a time frame to it. But what's easy to do is to open a Bitcoin account and put money into there. And I'm not saying that people are getting their stimulus checks and putting it all into Bitcoin account.
Well, the people that are doing well are, because it's extra money to them.
I would tell you that if you go look at Robinhood and some of the others, during this pandemic, as the money has come into the economy, there's been a massive increase in people opening those types of accounts. And so that's been good, by the way. Don't get me wrong. But clearly the stock market is not tied to the fundamentals of a business. That's for sure. Because
Right.
how can United Airlines or American Airlines do well during all this when we know they're losing billions of dollars? And you start to look at some of the individual companies. So, a friend of mine told me, he's like, you got to look at it almost like real estate. Like, there's so much money coming into the stock market, it's driving prices up because there's a lot of cash coming in, and there's, obviously that's putting a supply and demand issue around that particular stock or Bitcoin or whatever. Now, Bitcoin's a little more complicated because people are obviously now looking at inflation, and they're looking at the dollar, and they're looking at the devaluation of that and all of those kinds of things. Some people don't understand all of that, and they're doing it anyway, and they're like, oh my God, investing is so easy,
Right,
just
right.
throw some money into Bitcoin, and now it's gone up, and look how smart I am. So that's I think probably the bigger issue is that I don't like to call it gambling, because that's obviously very different, but there's not a lot of fundamentals behind it. There's not a lot to it. If you stick money somewhere, even in real estate, and the market continues to go up, it is luck. It's timing.
So, but you do think that a lot of the reason that all these asset classes are going up is because of that upper end of the K, because they're doing well and they need somewhere to put their money.
So yes, I do think that that's a piece of it, and I do think that this is all good. By the way, I mean, the fact that somebody gets $1,000 or $2,000 in a household and sticks it into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin goes to 4,000, that's good. I just hope it doesn't go down for those people.
Yeah.
It's and the real estate we've talked a lot about, that has more to do with the supply issue and the inventory issue, and people are moving right now. So what's going to happen is this K-shape, it's kind of wiping out the middle class. And I know there hasn't been a lot talked about this, but it is a big deal to pay attention to that middle class. It's not good. We need a good, strong middle class. You guys hopefully have gone to different countries and around the world. I've been all over the world, and there's a massive difference between the rich and the poor, and you really do need a solid middle class to keep an economy going. So that's the piece that I'm kind of watching, is the middle class.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, let us know, are you guys at the top end of the K, or are you at the bottom end of the K? Like, how has this impacted you? We would be very curious to know that.
Yeah. I think what's happening right now, the other thing that's not really being talked a lot about, people are starting to take a look at the state income tax rates. So, like California, obviously everybody likes to pick on California. The state income tax rate, the state, is 13.3%. New York is 8.8%. Now, ironically, those are two of the states that are the most impacted. You got to wonder why. And then you look over here at Utah. Let's say it's at 4.9%, or Arizona, which is right now at 4.5%. And you start to look at, I think Idaho's in the 6%. So as you start to look at things, when the economy's going well, you're not really paying attention to those little details. But when your money stops and it stops coming in from your business, from your job, or maybe you have some savings, and you start to take a look at it's almost like when my mom retired or my dad retired. You have to kind of look at the kind of money you have, and you kind of have to say, okay, what's going to happen? Am I going to have medical? Am I going to have housing? What are the things that are going to come out of that? Where's my income going to be, and how much savings am I going to use? So that's what people are looking at right now, and they're starting to make changes, and one of those changes is in these income tax rates. And I think the state income tax rates, and that's why, Arizona, like it or not, is booming right now.
Yeah, it is.
It's booming. And I don't know if we're leading the country, but we're pretty
close,
high. We're either 1 or 2 or 3 in the country for people moving here. And so, think about that, though. You imagine just by moving from California to Arizona, you're gonna save, what is it? Almost 7-8%
Right.
a year. That's a lot.
Yep. Especially if you make a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. So you start to look at some of these things, and it starts to make sense. And that's why these tax policies, they're coming out. They trust me. Excuse me when I say that they're going to come after the rich.
Yeah.
For sure on this K piece. People that are making a lot of money on the K. For sure, Biden's coming after those folks, and it's low hanging fruit. These people they're definitely going to, and they're going to redistribute it to the people on the lower part of the K.
Yep, and Martin said he's in the middle of the K. He's hoping to get squeezed upwards, and then Skull says he thinks that the crypto has a lot farther to fall than the assets than in real estate, because we always advocate for owning assets versus crypto if you have to choose between one or the other.
Yeah.
So let's talk about why homeowners and property owners are in a better position than tenants through all this.
Sure. Well, I think you just got to look at we talk a lot about this, as you guys know, on this channel, and why assets are important. So let's just take a look at passive income, like yourself. Let's just look at you. You have 3 rentals, and each rental produces $500 to $1,000 a month,
right?
Roughly, right? Net cash flow.
Yep.
Okay. So your job, even though your business was impacted,
yes, it was.
You had to, you opened a pre-pandemic,
yes,
unfortunately, in February. And 1 month later, you were told to close. Okay,
right.
Before so you had invested all this money, and you're not alone. And so what's held you up are your tenants, and so you got a lot smarter around who they were.
Yeah.
Because now before you're like, not that you should never be, cognizant of that. You got to make sure that obviously you put somebody in your rental that they're going to pay you. But I do know that you got a lot more focused on who.
Yeah, because I had one come up for rent, and I was a lot more focused on is their job essential,
right.
And
okay.
those things.
So who's in a better position? Your
right.
renter who's paying you, or you?
Right.
And so you, luckily, you can still have one vacancy and still be fine. You'll still be making, enough to cover. But you have 3 assets right now.
Right.
I'm not talking about the equity that you've gotten. I'm not talking about how much they've gone up in value. I'm talking about you made sure that those tenants were in the right industry. They could pay. I think one was a teacher, if I remember, or I can't remember exactly. But you focused on that, and so all of a sudden they're your safety net right now, and so I think you got to take a look at that.
Right.
And so you are in a better position. You get the tax benefits from being in as a landlord, and your job is to manage that well, make sure that those tenants are taken care of. And so you're in a far better situation, even if they lose their job, which could happen while they're living in one of your places. And then, of course, they're just reliant on their lifelines, whatever that might be. It could be family, could be friends, could be savings, could be unemployment.
Well, and also with inflation, if inflation happens, that actually, in a way, would benefit those of you that own property, because your what you pay for rent's going to go up, or charge for rent's going to go up, and your mortgage hopefully is fixed and is going to stay the same.
Correct.
Whereas with a tenant, their rent's going to go up with inflation, and they're just going to have to hope that their wages go up to meet that same inflation demand.
That's a really good point. So we've talked about this. So if you're making 2 or 3% in wage growth, and inflation is higher than that, then you're actually going backwards. So and by the way, when inflation's measured, it measures a lot of things. So the government might measure certain things, but you might be feeling it elsewhere. In other words, your kid's daycare might be going up. The interest rate goes up on a car.
Well, I know my grocery bill has been going up since all this started.
Bill. Right. So you have to take a look at their basket of goods, whatever they are, that measures inflation compared to your own, and that will tell you whether or not you're moving up or not. And so, as we just saw this incredible, rent growth, which was not necessarily good for the people from an affordability affordability standpoint, and I'm in the rental business, but when you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% annual rent growth, that's not good. It's good for the landlord, obviously, but it's not good for the people living in your individual apartment or home. Selfishly, it's just not. It doesn't help them if they're now paying you $100 more a month or $1,000 more a year, and they're not getting that kind of wage growth. So, that's why the supply and demand is so important, and that's why this money that the government just gave everyone was so important. Because if you look, the businesses, there's something like go to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce did a really cool article on the K-shaped recovery, and they said that 4 million businesses are still in trouble and they've run out of this PPP money. And so PPP is the payroll protection program. So the government gave them money so that they could pay again the people on the lower end of the K. So all of this is kind of happening all at the same time. And the big issue that I think we're just at the very beginning of this, because the unemployment, the vaccine, I think, is rolling out nicely. People are starting to get a little more comfortable, but there is definitely a massive change in the way people are going to behave on traveling, on getting on cruise ships or planes or whatever it might be.
And their finances have been impacted.
Their finances, right. Well, there's a really good website, www.apnorc.com or .org, sorry, and it says that over 50% of the people experience obviously a fairly significant financial loss, and 4 in 10 are still reeling from this financial impact from the pandemic, and are not going to come back anytime soon. And some of them have even said in at least a 10-year period. Yeah,
and Jules made an interesting comment. They said, I have several income properties, and thanks to the availability of government assistance checks, I haven't lost a single month's rent. And I think that's important to know, because those checks that they're sending out actually help landlords.
For sure. Without a doubt, guys. I mean, it's just helped everything. And that's why, even though you guys it is what it is. I'm not saying that anything negative around the money that has been given to people, but you have to know that when you inject that kind of money into the economy, that it's going to show up at some point from an inflation standpoint. Right now, savings rates are as high as they've ever been. And people are actually paying off credit cards. Some people are living on credit cards, but other people are
the
paying
people
them
on
off.
the top of the K that are doing fine are taking that extra money and paying off their debt.
They're trying to reduce their debt because they're taking a look at the cost of that. So if let's say you own $10,000 or $50,000 in credit card debt and you're paying 10%, you're better off to use your cash and pay that off. And so some people are living off of credit cards. Some people are paying off of credit cards. But the big issue is when things start to recover, whatever that means, then the big belief is that these people are going to start spending again. Because I've seen this before. I saw it in 2008. People go back to their old habits.
Yeah.
They do. They go back to their old habits, and they so hopefully, they have a little bit better reserves so that they don't get into this kind of a financial situation. But I think what we try to do here at Ken.com is make people get in a situation so this doesn't happen to them again, so that they're actually in the landlord seat.
Right.
That's what we want. We want people to if unfortunately you are going through this, and now hopefully you can go get into this landlord seat, get into that passive income role, and what I like to say is be the Fed, instead of be the Fed, be the one that produces and not as the consumer, because that's the big difference.
Right. Those of you that are not landlords yet that are tuning in, that should be your goal, whether it's renting a room in the place you rent out or renting a room in your home, something to kind of help save money to get your first rental property.
There's a lot of things that you guys can do right now for, what I would call real estate side hustles. And you should be considering those, even renting a room or house hacking or renting a garage or, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And we'll talk about those on another video, but there's a lot you guys can be doing. And Aiden on YouTube was saying, how is the residential construction business going to fare in the next few years is a great question.
Oh, it's horrible right now. And that's part of the reason why the prices are so high is, and personally we're affected. We're building several projects right now. And just like lumber, as I've mentioned before, on one project, we were $1 million over just on lumber. And so, as these supply chains things are, becoming a problem, then, and they are, guys. I don't know if you guys have tried to go buy things, but, what we were used to, whether it's golf clubs or TVs or building whatever, I think the National Home Builders Association said that the price of a home has gone up somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 because of the cost
to build it. You mean
to build it? Yeah. So that same house pre-pandemic. So just go to NAHB.org and it's on their website and you can kind of see. So that's going to be a problem because no matter what you say, that tax on the home builder does not absorb that.
Right.
The consumer absorbs that. And now that we have these higher interest rates, it just makes people it creates them further and further away from affordability.
Right, the affordability issue.
Right.
And Ron from Premium had a question about that. He said, any idea when lumber costs will start to normalize?
I wish I knew. I just don't. I think a lot of it has to do, I know a lot of it has to do with, it's a complicated issue. It has to do with the pandemic, has to do with some tariffs. And a lot of the lumber mills have been bought up, and I think just the trade between the U.S. and Canada. I know a lot of the lumber comes out of Canada, so I just don't know. I saw this before in plumbing. I've seen it in drywall. I've seen it in over the years, just all these different things. They pop up on labor. Labor's a big problem right now. Oddly enough, even though we have all this big unemployment, construction labor, subcontractor labor, it's very, very, very hard. There's not a lot of young people getting into the trades, into the electrical trades, the plumbing trades, and those kinds of things, unfortunately. And so, if you guys are in trouble and you're trying to figure out what to do next, my suggestion is if you go, I grew up in the HVAC business, the mechanical contractor. My dad was a mechanical contractor. Those guys make a lot of money, and obviously there's some work around it, and there's some trade schools around that, but there's a massive trade shortage of young guys, and there's some incredible people that would mentor you and apprentice you through that. It's and I think a lot of kids should be looking at that as an alternative to getting a degree, moving into this next generation, whatever that is going to look like.
Great. Yep, I agree. And so Justin from Premium wanted to know, Ken, Phoenix multifamily values, and really multifamily values everywhere, are through the roof. How much runway do you think is left?
It's a great question. So I look at, we're obviously trying to buy. We're building here in Phoenix, and we're buying in other areas. We have properties that we're in escrow on in multiple markets, including Texas, and at the end of the day, here's what I think. I think that there's a tremendous amount of people that are going to be pushing to rentals, and that's because of the disruption we have on the eviction side. They're going to stay there, but they're doubling up. Kids are moving home with their parents. It's the highest it's ever been. Last I looked, it was 25 or 26 million people. They double up. They roommate up. They move in with their parents. They do all those kinds of things. That's all happening. It's all going to continue to happen. We have forbearance, still kind of keeping everything lid on everything. That is definitely going to continue. And when that gets released, you're going to start to see these home mortgages pop, and that inventory. So those people are then obviously going to move into rentals, and so there's we're heading into kind of a renter nation for a while. So if you own multifamily, there's going to be a continued supply shortage and a demand, I believe, in the foreseeable future until that gets offset somehow through government policy, through tax incentives, through whatever it might be. And so even though prices are really, really high, I think that the multifamily is going to have an incredible run ahead of it, but it's hard to make financial sense. That's for sure. It's tough to buy right now.
Yep. It's got a cash flow. Jing wanted to know from Premium, I know you want to hold on to your properties as long as possible, but with the value going up, does it ever become a point where the cost of maintenance and repair becomes unfeasible and you should sell?
So if the cost of maintenance and repair are a problem, then you might have another problem, which is, obviously the question would be why. Why, we don't have any issues around maintenance and repair on our properties.
You mean financing it?
No.
Yeah.
When we buy something, we put new roofs on, we paint it, we do the landscaping, we do all that stuff. So maintenance repairs are not one of those things. It could be a bad tenant. So that could be a management issue. The bigger issue is going to be around property tax, because we pay big property tax, obviously, for all of our properties, insurance costs, payroll costs, marketing costs, all those things that are utility costs. Those are the bigger issues, in my opinion, as you start to take a look at. But at the end of the day, the bigger issue for me is if we sold all of our real estate today, then what would I do? I would stick it in a bank or
try to invest it with
give
someone
it to a
else.
wealth manager, try to stick it, and then try to figure out what to do with it next. And so if I have a cash flowing property, I don't really look at the equity as a way to, financial freedom, because then I just have that cash. And I think that you don't want to be heavy in cash right now, moving into this, what I would call a high inflationary time frame.
Now, we have one more question from Premium. Leonardo wanted to know, he has a lot of small multifamilies in the urban Houston market. So, the trend is for people to be leaving the cities and going to the suburbs. Do you think that this is going to impact the urban area multi-family units, or do you think people will eventually come back to the cities?
It already is. So if you take a look at, I have friends in downtown Seattle, which is where I'm from. I have friends in downtown LA that own multifamily, Chicago, New York. And yes, so for sure, you're definitely going to, and by the way, it depends on the pricing, it depends on the block, depends on the submarket, depends on the employment, depends on the population in that particular area. Obviously, there are areas that are going to be super unique. Houston is a little bit different because it's kind of governed by oil and gas, but Houston's kind of an oil and gas town. But yes, generally Texas, specifically Austin, is doing very, very well. It's kind of a tech. But I would say that you're definitely starting to see, again, this is an affordability issue. So if you have a high price place in a suburb and it's, not that much different than a high price place down, let's say, in an urban area, then you probably are not going to see, much difference. But if you have something that's really nice, it's maybe half the cost, you're probably going to be in a pretty good situation. But there's definitely, people are starting to look at their own money. They're starting to look at their own expenses, and they're starting to look at how far that can go based on what's happening. And so that's where you need to keep your head. And if you can provide something at half the price, then you're probably going to be in a pretty good situation.
Okay. Well, that is all for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back here next week. If you want to ensure your questions get answered, just hop on over to kenmcrory.com/premium, and we'll see you guys next Monday.
See you guys. Cheers.